John's gospel tells us that before Jesus invited his disciples to the table, before he talked to them about the plague of sin and the greater Lamb who will wash it all away, before all of that, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords took off his outer robe, dressed himself like a slave, got down on his hands and knees. He got his hands wet, and then he got his hands dirty because he washed his disciples' feet. And John makes a point of telling us that the reason he did that was because he loves them. Then the king stood up, put his garment back on, and he looked at the citizens of his kingdom. He looked at those disciples, and he said to them, if you're going to be in my kingdom, then you got a new way of life. You've got to do for each other what I just did for you, to be willing to go low, get your hands dirty, and love each other sacrificially. He told them that in his kingdom, you follow a king who will go all the way to a cross, and that we should expect nothing different. He called them to a radical new way of life. Then he called them out of the upper room, up to the Garden of Gethsemane, where he prayed for them, that they would be empowered to follow him. And then the king died. He died for the citizens in his kingdom. Do you remember how they responded to all of those acts of Jesus' overwhelming love? They betrayed him, they abandoned him, and they denied even knowing him. And it's a funny thing, isn't it? That oftentimes for all of us, when we see the most amazing love given to us, that instead of allowing our hearts to melt, they get ice cold, hard as a rock, hard as ice. And our response to a king who calls us to follow him is to say, I'd rather be my own king or my own queen. See, sin infects everything, so much so it'll even harden our hearts. Friends, we need a better king than us. And we need to see that who that king is meant not to harden, but to cause us to melt. To do this prayer station, you're going to need an ice cube for every person who's participating, maybe a couple paper towels. When you have them, you can start the station.